Hi, my name is Isabella,
My name's Riley.
and you're watching the Share Podcast.
I play the fire. Let's drop the man rise.
Welcome, everybody, to an exclusive edition of the Sheriff Podcast. Guys, do I ever have a treat for you? Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, hockey is the #1 sport in Canada. Now, most of us get the chance to play, but very few of us have the opportunity to play professionally. One of the greatest challenges is finding a meaningful career after we are done playing. Today, ladies and gentlemen, me and my guests will take you on a journey which brings you from the NHL to the top executive. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls all over the world, I would like to introduce to you my guest today. He hails from Toronto, Ontario at 6'1", 175 pounds. He is a middleweight. He was drafted by the Boston Bruins in the 1991 NHL entry draft. He played 4 professional seasons in the NHL and AHL, ladies and gentlemen. Former coach of the St. Michael's Buzzers, former coach of the Thornhill Thunderbirds, and scout for the Boston Bruins. Currently the senior VP for Plaza Corp. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Scott McLellan, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
Good, buddy. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah,
This is
I got
awesome.
to hear the applause.
Yeah.
The crowd is absolutely rocking today,
They
Scott.
are. They
and
are.
I feel really grateful to have you on the show, buddy, because I find, well, first of all, today is the 150th episode of the Sheriff Podcast. Okay?
Yeah, it's great.
I couldn't have gotten a better guest for it.
Wow.
And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why, Scott. Now, your journey that you went through, I find, like we talked about in the beginning of the before the recording, I find it's very important because a lot of hockey players these days, we're finding out, once they're done playing, they go through depression. They start using drugs. They don't know what they want to do. They're trying to fill that void.
Yeah.
So to hear stories, positive stories, of how former NHL players made out, I just think it's so important. So I appreciate you coming on, my man.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Sheriff, it's awesome to be here with you.
So now, Scott, I'm not going to let you off that easy. We are going to go right to the beginning. So now, I know that you're from Toronto. Now, were you actually born in Toronto?
I was born almost in the downtown part of the city. So kind of the Keele-Eglinton area is sort of where I was born and raised. And went to St. Mike's High School. And after I was at St. Mike's, I was fortunate enough to get drafted in the Ontario Hockey League and left Toronto and came back several years later. So yeah.
Right on. So now, what I always ask my really big characters that come on is I try to dig a little bit deep. I try to see what is the reason for this person becoming such a big character. So now, I want to talk a little bit about your family, Scott, because I know that's very important, especially to competitive players growing up. Do you have any siblings?
No. So it was my mother. My mother was a single mother.
Okay.
Remarried when I was in the 7th grade, and actually remarried my coach, my Pee Wee coach.
Okay.
Who ended up becoming my father, and one of my sons that's here tonight ended up becoming his grandpa.
Wow.
And,
Okay.
Didn't know any different, and we lost him back in 2008. So yeah,
Sorry to hear that.
So that's the journey, and I was blessed.
Well, absolutely. Now, speaking of Pee Wee, what I wanted to talk about, when I see that my guests have played in the Quebec Pee Wee International Tournament, I have to ask them about it because, Scott, for me, it was my first taste of like stardom, the big lights,
yeah.
the big stage.
It was.
Let's talk about the Quebec tournament because I know there's a couple little side stories. Like,
Oh no,
of you competing.
there sure are. So I was I played a year up in my minor Pee Wee year, so I got to play in the Quebec tournament twice. The first year that I went to the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, we had a great team, but talk about the big stage. So I'll tell you an interesting story. That first year, we played against the local Quebec Pee Wee team. So how many people would have been in the arena?
Probably about
10,000 people. And here I am, 11 years old, and you're going out and you're playing in front of that many people. I don't know that I was ever that nervous in my life. You know, when the puck drops, it's just like today, right? When we get out and play, you start to play and you start to go on with it. But I got to go again in the next year, which was my natural Pee Wee year, and we made it to the semifinals and almost got to play on national television on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
Except one of our players scored in his own net. And
Really?
Yep. Detroit Paddock Pools eliminated us on the Saturday night, and we missed the Sunday game. Yes.
Wow. Now, okay, and I appreciate you sharing that for sure.
Yeah.
So now I wanted to kind of go along the timeline, Scott. So like when you started playing like junior A tier 2, this is when you were actually a student at St. Mike's?
I was.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so you played for the St. Michael's Buzzers.
So I actually played for the midget team.
Okay.
And was drafted. I had a really interesting journey as a kid. So after Pee Wee, I had sort of one of those tall, lanky bodies that couldn't get any strength.
Yep. Well, I know all about those.
Yeah, you know, so many
Yep.
of us have had to go
Yep.
through that. And I didn't actually make the AAA midget team. I had to play midget AA, and then the next year played AAA.
Yep.
And then was drafted into the to the Niagara Falls Flyers.
Right on.
So that's sort of that adjustment year was scary. I just didn't think I could play again. Everybody had passed me, players that I was ahead of maybe in terms of talent and skill level and all those kinds of things, just because of the strength factor passed me. And then it all came back. Like it was that awkward sort of teenage
Yeah.
14, 15, 16, 17-year-old that a lot of us go through. And I was able to at least get some strength back and play again.
Right on. So now, one of the things that I was really curious to ask you was, because I'm also St. Mike's alumni as well.
Yeah.
I only went there for a couple of grades.
Oikity choik on C, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So now, at the time, Scott, did you realize how many connections you were going to make and how St. Mike's was really going to have an impact for the rest of your life? Because that's what it's done for me. Did you have any idea at the time?
Unbelievable, and what a perceptual field that you have to understand that. Yes, I do. Even when I came back to hockey, I used to teach at the hockey schools while I was playing. Then when I was sort of in between, what the heck am I going to do with the rest of my life? I went back to St. Mike's and started helping out with the Buzzers. Got to meet a gentleman by the name of Dennis Mills. His son Craig played in Winnipeg and played in the league for a little while. And he was he had a company in Toronto, and he was also a senior VP at Magna International. And he started giving me opportunities, and I took full advantage of those opportunities after I'd finished playing. So yes, St. Mike's is an unbelievable place for so many reasons, athletically, educationally, and certainly after you leave there, there's a connection that is paramount to the growth of a lot of people's success.
I find that it's like a brotherhood of like none other. I'm really glad that we're able to experience it, and you know, I've embraced it. I'm very, very proud to say that I went to St. Michael's College, and I'm glad that you are too.
Yeah.
So now this is going to be a little bit exciting now, because we're going to talk about you entering the OHL, but also playing for a team that had Mr. Steve Ludzig on it, which I saw. Like I saw that you played for Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
I was looking at the years, and I'm like, I think Ludzig played around this time. Do you have any stories about that, man?
Oh my God! You know, I absolutely love Ludsey, and most people do.
Yeah.
I was intimidated by the guy. Like, you know, you get to training camp, and I hope he sees this, because I think I've embarrassed him with this story a million times. But we you know, you get to training camp. Everybody in minor hockey knows who he is. So now that you're going in the Ontario Hockey League, you certainly know who Steve Ludzic is.
Yeah.
And we had a ton of characters. My gosh, like real character guys. Mark Osborne, Steve Larmer. Kevin McLellan. You know, we had a bunch of first-round picks. The young guys that all went to the team at the same time, myself, Paul Gillis, Tom Thornberry.
Wow.
You know, we had a... And I made it. I was able to make the team. Broke my wrist about 12 games in 6 places and was out for a while. But Steve Ludzic said to me right at the end of training camp when I had signed and I was going to make the team. And I don't know, but you know, when you sign and you make the team, you probably think you're a little better than you are.
Oh,
Sean,
yeah.
is that fair?
Very, very confident.
Yeah,
Let's say you're very confident.
Yeah, you're going to the show. Like, Steve Ludzic took me aside and he said to me, I really want to win a Memorial Cup. We almost did it in my rookie year. We didn't do it last year. We're going to win a Memorial Cup. You know what's going to stop me from winning a Memorial Cup? Rookies like you. What the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
And he was blunt. Like, you got to play. You got to come every single day as a tryout here. And that was the speech he gave me. And he meant it. And he was a leader. I'll tell you what, though. The first time I was ever in trouble on the ice, Ludsey was the first guy over the boards to make sure I was protected. So... and he's the same way now. He is still the same way. And one of my favorite all-time teammates was Steve Ludzic.
Right on. Well, I'm happy to hear all that. I'm a huge fan of Lindsay.
Yeah.
And ever since I met the guy, the respect that his family's shown me, like I feel like I'm almost a part of their family now.
Yeah.
Especially with Ryan and Steve Jr. So that's thank you for sharing that because I'm a big Lindsay fan.
Yeah. Many people are.
Oh yeah. Sticking with this Ontario Hockey League, I was so amazed just to see, because I'm a stat guy, right?
Yeah.
So I love to see the numbers. Now, first of all, you improved every single year.
Yeah.
So what does that tell me? That tells me that you embrace the system, that you're incredibly coachable, and that everybody liked you. Because unless those three main things happen, you're not going to improve as a player. Okay, so that's what I've learned over the years. Now, you got traded to the Peterborough Petes. Niagara Falls might have been fun playing with like legends like Ludsey, but let's talk about the Petes, man, because the production went skyrocketing. And I haven't even got into that last season yet, but let's start when you first got there.
So I got to tell you a funny story. There was a defenseman that played in Peterborough, and his name was Andy Schliebner, and that's who I was traded for. Andy Schliebner had made the Vancouver Canucks at a training camp and didn't want to go back to Peterborough. Peterborough was going through a little bit of an adjustment, from being the superstar organization that everybody wanted to go to Memorial Cups, great coaches. They were going through a little bit of an adjustment. That's who I got traded for. So I get into Peterborough. I'm there one night. I'm listening to some call-in show, and the fans are calling in and saying, you know what, did we think we were trading for Kevin McLellan, but we got Scott McLellan? We just gave up a first-team all-star defenseman for this guy. And I felt right away that I was in a hockey market, albeit junior, and I had to be ready and I had to produce. And I was fortunate enough to play for Dick Todd. I mean, Dick Todd was the trainer when I first got there. Dave Dryden, who just passed away recently, was the coach. He got fired. Our trainer took over. Best coach I've ever had. Allowed me to play, have a ton of creative, gave me the creative license to do what I needed to do offensively. Had a power play that was spectacular. And in that first year, you're still a second-year player, but I'd only played 30 games the year before because of my wrist injury.
That's right.
10 games healthy, 20 games with a cast on my arm.
Oh.
So, you know what? This is really my rookie year.
Yes.
Somehow I got drafted in the National Hockey League in between there, but yes, it was really my rookie year. So playing in Peterborough under Dick, probably the best experience, certainly the best coach I've ever had. And that was the start of really good things to come in the next year and a half.
So now, and thank you for sharing that. So now, after that first season with Peterborough, that summer was the draft, right? Or was it after?
It was after Niagara Falls.
After Niagara Falls. So before you got to Peterborough.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get right into the draft then, because there's a couple really cool questions that I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, did you go to your draft?
No.
Okay. Now this is a fair question. Trust me, I'm a player, so I know there's for many reasons guys go and for many reasons they don't.
That's right.
My agent had a rule. You had to be rated in the first 3 rounds.
Right.
Was something similar that for you?
That's funny. My agent was Bill Waters. He had the same thing, and I was rated in the first 3 rounds. But the scary part was I played 30 games. 20 with a cast on my hand.
That's right.
So there's a real good chance I'm not going to get drafted. Although I did receive a ton of phone calls. I had a lot of interviews on the telephone. I went to a function once where a bunch of the teams were there.
Yeah.
And they were really concerned about my wrist. And I assured them that after the cast came off, I played in the playoffs and had no issues at all. I didn't score or get any points, but I played a lot.
Yeah.
And we lost in 7 games to Kitchener, who went on to the Memorial Cup that year.
Cup winners.
So, and that's where. So I didn't go to the draft. I'm going to tell you another reason why I didn't go to the draft.
Yeah, please.
The draft was on a Friday.
Okay.
I had an English exam Friday morning.
Okay. So where was it? Where was the draft?
It was in Montreal.
It was in Montreal.
It was in Montreal.
Okay,
So-
right on.
Right.
Wow.
So, but you know what? My agent said to me, you know what? Maybe it's not the best idea to go. Go if you like, but probably not the best idea to go. And that's exactly what I did. I stayed home, did the exam. By the time I got home, I got the phone call.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
Like, where were you when you got the call? Like, were you home?
I was back. No, I was in Niagara Falls living with my billet family.
Yeah. But
And
but you were home for the night.
I had just finished. The draft was in the afternoon. I just finished my exam. I took the bus home from school. which, Niagara Falls Transit, got to the house, and I walked in and the phone rang. And it was Bill Waters' secretary, assistant, and she said to me, "Hey, did you hear the news?" "No." And just as she was telling me, the local radio station was on, and they had just announced it because they were going through local people, Niagara Falls Flyers, and all those kinds of things. And it was the Boston Bruins. Yeah.
So now, Scotty, this is when it turns up a level of interest here. Your last year in Peterborough.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if there was records that were broken, but you had a phenomenal season. These are my questions for that, because the OHL is a tricky time.
Yeah.
We're teenagers playing a professional schedule. I believe there's more pressure in your life than when you're an adult. You're worried about girls, you're worried about school, you're worried about what guys think in the dressing room. You're still a teenager, you're all worried about that stuff. And then you got to perform on a professional level, right?
Yeah.
So when I see guys that have absolutely spectacular seasons, like you did your last year in Peterborough, everything had to have come together.
It did.
Your land parents must have been good. Can you talk about that kind of stuff? Because I'm intrigued by it.
Yeah. So the second I got to Peterborough, I lived with an older lady whose husband had just passed away.
Okay.
And I lived with a fellow on the team named Doug Speck, and it was a great place to live. Great house. She was fantastic. She cooked great meals. The second year you go back there, you're familiar with everything. Actually, the funny thing about when I first went to Peterborough, I went to a school where no other players on the team, because I was traded. So a lot of the players were at a semester school.
Okay.
I didn't come from a semester school, so I went to a school where I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And I walk in, and you're walking around the hallways. You got to know, right?
I was traded a few times, so yeah.
So you're the new guy walking around a school. Everybody's staring at you. You know they're talking about you, right? So, and I was believe it or not, I was a quiet, shy guy back in those days.
Yeah.
Things have changed. And I ended up making great friends in that city that I keep in touch with today.
Okay.
But again, playing on that team in Peterborough, we had superstars. I mean, we played 4 lines, Sean. Like, we were a team that played 4 lines. That was the way, and it was a 1-2-2. Let's score on the power play in the first 10 minutes of the game, and let's dump it in, set up a 1-2-2. Hard to get 100 points.
Yeah.
Really difficult to get 100 points.
Yeah.
So you know what? But that playing the 4 lines, that discipline that we had to play 4 lines and to make sure our power play was the best in the league benefited me big time, and I was able to really, really flourish from it.
So, and thank you for sharing that. The last 2 things I got to ask about Peterborough is I've heard a couple stories about people thinking that you and Stevie Y played together when you didn't play together,
and
right?
He's the first one to tell you we didn't play together.
But what I find is that people are trying to take this 101-point season, a little bit of the credit away, say, oh, he played with Stevie Y. You didn't play with Stevie Y. No. You earned all those 101 points with blood, sweat, and tears.
So I tell everybody, and Stevie's been present when I've told him that, the reason I got 101 points because everybody's checking line played against Stevie, and I got a lot of open ice. And he's a gracious guy and he's a terrific guy. But it's funny because we were in Detroit right before the COVID hit and the lockdown hit, and my son and I went into the Red Wings office, and there was a person in the office who said, actually Jimmy Devellano said they played together, and Steve was the first one to say, no, we didn't. We never played together.
We didn't.
And I said, Steve, you sound like you're proud of the fact we didn't play together. So, but no, it was a wonderful experience, and I just wish we could have won a Memorial Cup that year. It was
well, it would have been that would have been incredible.
The cherry, yeah.
But honestly, Scott, what's more incredible, and I've talked to a couple of guests that have been able to experience this like you have, but we got to talk about you being junior aged, but playing so well, getting an opportunity with the big club. So how did it happen?
Okay.
And how did you handle that pressure?
So we played at home on a Thursday night against Belleville, and we weren't very good, but we won. And it had been about the 3rd game in a row that we weren't very good. In this particular night, it might have been the worst game I played in 3 years. I was terrible. Like we won. I remember we won, but like every time I was on the ice, the puck was in our end. I didn't win one battle on a rim around. I lost the puck coming out with just an awful night. I wanted to get home, and Dick Todd came in our dressing room after, and he was upset. He was, he let us have it, and he just, this is unacceptable. I don't know how we won tonight. We shouldn't have won tonight. Now I go home and I go to bed. And it's about 10 to 7 in the morning and our phone rings. And the family I live with, the lady comes in and says, Scott, Mr. Todd's on the phone. I'm like, oh my God, like, did he trade me? Like, what does he want?
That early?
He never phones me.
Yeah.
So I get up and I take the phone and he says, hey, how you doing? He says, how do you think you played last night? Awful. He says, well, I got an interesting one for you. You're not going to be playing tomorrow night in Kitchener. And because we were going to Kitchener. Yeah. And I said, I'm stunned. He said, you got to get down to the rink and get your equipment. You're going to Montreal. You're playing for the Bruins tomorrow night.
So Montreal.
Yeah. So I get there's a little airport in Peterborough on it. Like, I don't think they fly anymore, but there was a flight that would go from Peterborough to Montreal, Peterborough, Toronto. Okay. And I got into Montreal before the team did. And soon I waited in the lobby and played the next night against the Canadiens.
Wow, and this is in the Forum.
In the
Montreal Forum.
It was the Forum.
The historic Montreal Forum.
My first shift, Mike Moffat was our backup goalie. Okay. So I jumped over the boards, and as soon as I jumped over the boards, there was a whistle. So there was a face-off in our end, and I had Bob Gainey beside me, and Mark Hunter was at center, and Guy Lafleur was on right wing. And I look back, and there's big Larry Robinson on defense. I'm not even sure who the other defenseman was. Mike Moffat leans across the bench, and he says, if you're not nervous right now, you're not human.
Well, I mean, absolute legends you just mentioned.
I couldn't get it.
That's incredible.
First shift in the National
That's
Hockey
absolutely
League.
incredible.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to tell a story of Mario Lemieux scoring a goal in his first shift in his first game and something like that. But hey, to be on the ice with all those legends,
it was great.
That would top anything.
It was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
No, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So Scott, like, I mean, you're such an intriguing guy that, like, I would need about a 4-hour show to fit everything in. I want to focus in on, like I needed to get the Boston games in, but I wanted to focus in on the post playing. So when you, I know that you probably weren't sure if you were going to continue playing or not, but I know that you went to go skate with the St. Michael's Buzzers. Again, St. Mike's comes back into our lives again.
That's right.
Can you kind of talk about that time frame when you started skating with the Buzzers, and then of course the opportunity that you got with the coaching?
I don't know how you know that story, but I'm impressed that you know that story. That's exactly what happened. There was a chance that I would go back to Hershey, where I'd been playing in the American Hockey League, but it was Philadelphia's team. And so I came back to Toronto after my last camp in Boston, and just like you said, I started skating with the St. Mike's Buzzers just to stay in shape.
Yes.
And then I started giving some real thought and some real soul searching about what I wanted to do. And did I really want to go back and play in the American League for a couple of more years, or did I want to get on with life?
Yes.
And you picked up on this earlier. I knew that if I sort of hung around St. Mike's, helped with the Buzzers, I had the opportunity to come in and help as a coach. The head coach at the time was a fellow by the name of Bill Fifield, who really liked my work in the summertime teaching the hockey schools.
Okay.
And he gave me a chance to start to work with him. He ended up basically handing the team to me and letting me become the head coach.
Wow.
So clearly I'm not going to play anymore.
Yes.
And again, through St. Mike's, I got to meet some people, and I needed a job. Like, I didn't know whether I was going to go back to school and take marketing courses. I wasn't a great student. Mm-hmm. So that was going to be a real paradigm shift for me and a real adjustment. So at that stage, I got hired. And I decided at that stage of my life I was going to really work hard as I could.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? Then, again, I go back to the Buzzers. Mm-hmm. We ended up with I think we probably had about 8 or 9 guys that made the NHL out of the years that I was at the Buzzers, but certainly 30 guys got D1 scholarships, which I was incredibly proud of. And our teams won. We won a provincial championship in '89.
Yes, I did see that.
I ended up getting to know Tony Morrow, and Tony Morrow at the time is the CEO of Tridel.
Yep.
And he says to me, you know, they own the Thornhill Thunderbirds. He says, why don't you come and coach us? Don't necessarily go back to school. You may want to do that, but why don't you start to work in our construction department? And maybe you can get into our project management department. But the door's open. Take advantage of it. There's 24 hours in a day. You're going to probably need 8 of them to sleep. The rest of the time, you figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. Wow. Pretty
Yeah,
dynamic.
no, that would blow me away.
And that's exactly what happened. I had that opportunity and really jumped both feet into the deep end with this business. And you got to be lucky. You got to work hard. I've never liked the word luck because I think that you get a lot of success out of hard work and effort and all of those kinds of things. But I was fortunate that I ran into a couple of people that believed in me and gave me the opportunity and continue to support me through that opportunity. And then it's up to you to take advantage of it. Just like when you get on the ice. Like once you're on the ice, you're not going to fool anybody.
No.
You got to play. And it's the same way in business, or it's the same way in anything else that you do. You got to make sure that if you get the opportunity, take advantage of it.
So now, and that's a remarkable story. I really, really appreciate you saying that. So now, I wanna get into that timeline of when you're working for Tridel. Now, you earned your way climbing the ladder. But during this time, you did a pretty interesting thing with Hot Property on as a television show.
Yeah.
And like from what I've heard, like your position at your company, you had a huge fan base because everybody was so proud that Scott had this television show. Like, do you mind talking about that?
Well, so it's still on. And,
yes. Yes.
I think you were telling me Al St. Clair.
Mr.
was
Al
on
St.
your-
Clair.
Yeah, and that's where I first met Al. It was Tridel was one of the sponsors, and it was a real estate show that certainly helped drive my portfolio. And again, you had to be prepared for it. It was a live call-in show.
Yeah.
The CRTC has rules about live call-in shows. Like you can't, like that little microphone in your ear wasn't to say that, Bob from Pickering's going to ask about the market. No, you had to be on your feet on live television and make sure you understood what was happening. There were times I think I struggled with it, but at the end of the day, it's just being prepared and being ready for an opportunity and taking it. And the show really helped build a lot of people's portfolio personally and professionally. And it was a fun thing to do, that's for sure.
So now, did you find that any of your experience with hockey, like being in front of the cameras, getting interviewed, did any of that stuff help when you started the show with Hot Property, like at least confidence-wise?
Confidence-wise, 100%, and that's what I was going to say. It always gives you the confidence because you know what? Hockey players are generally all A personalities, right? And you know what? We're all sort of in a position where it's you against the world when you're out there. Especially if you're a tough guy, which I wasn't. So you know what that's like, and you get the opportunity in business to shine the same way. And again, but you know what? You got to be ready for it. You have to be prepared. You don't go to the rink at 5:30 for a 7 o'clock game, throw your skates on, pour yourself a coffee, and go out and play.
Exactly.
If you haven't been prepared the whole week of practice, the whole day of the game, it's the same way when you get into a business situation. It's the same way when you're looking at a file with a potential partner. You've got to be prepared. If you go in cold, no matter what you're doing, you are going to struggle, and you're not going to be successful. Coaching, scouting, business, relationships with your family members, you have to be prepared.
That's some powerful, powerful stuff. Scott, So Scott, one of the things that I wanted to talk about before we were done is I wanted to discuss like the things that you're currently doing now. Now, before the recording, I was so happy to hear that you skate twice a week currently.
Yeah.
Twice a week. That's remarkable. How long have you been doing that?
For probably about 10 or 12 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, right on.
So as soon as Eric stopped playing, he had the ice at North Toronto a couple times a week.
Yep.
Eric Lindros.
This is Eric Lindros, yeah.
I don't mean to be a name dropper.
Oh, no, hey.
It's his ice, it's his skate.
In Toronto, people know about the skate. They just wish they could get into it.
Yeah, so
very special clientele in that skate.
So we've probably had about close to 20 ex-players over the years that have joined the skate. Some of them have never missed. They're still there. A great group of guys. We have a lot of fun. When you see each other twice a week, sometimes you're seeing these guys more than you're seeing your family members. And And you know what? Once you're back in the dressing room, it doesn't matter whether you're playing for the Boston Bruins or you're playing pickup hockey on a Thursday morning. It's the exact same vibe. It's the same family. It's the same dynamic. It's absolutely incredible. And I don't know that any other sport has that, Sean. I don't know. It's hockey. Hockey has a special. There's a special angel watching every dressing room.
Camaraderie that is done in the dressing room, I find that you can't compare that to any other situation.
Yeah.
The one reason why I wanted to bring this up is because I know a lot of players that are done now, they're not going to skates, and they need to. We need to be out there. There's a reason why we played the game for so long.
Yeah.
I find that every single player that is done playing needs to get back on the ice. It's just a must. So I wanted to hear your sample of what you do for the ice right now. Lastly, I want to congratulate you, and I don't know if I'm going to be pronouncing it right, but I know that 2 out of the 3 past years, I believe, that you guys have won the Terrion's Home Builder of the Year award.
Yeah, very,
is that
very
how
proud.
you pronounce it?
Yeah, Terrion.
Terrion.
So when I first left Tridel and I joined Plaza Corp, I joined Plaza Corp because they were an up-and-coming company that was going to be extremely successful. My title now there is chief operating officer, and I needed to rebuild a brand.
I got to shake your hand for that, buddy.
I had to rebuild a brand, and part of rebuilding a brand is to make sure that your customers, people that spend their hard-earned money buying a home from you, are treated better than anybody else that can sell them a home. And that's a very lofty commitment to make. And the way that you win that award is Terrion is an independent body that goes out to everybody that buys a brand new home in this province and rates their builders. And every part of the process, I wanted to make sure we were number 1 in, so that when those phone calls came in, we would win that award. And the only year that we didn't win the award in the last 3, we didn't qualify for enough closings just because we didn't have enough that year. Like one year we might have had 1,000 people close their unit, but because of the construction process, we were down to 100, and we needed a minimum of 100. Yeah. Then the next year back up to 1,000 again, so that's where we would win it. But very, very proud of that.
Yes.
Very proud of the team that I work with.
Yep.
Because they had to buy into this. I didn't want them to view me as just some sort of angry guy at the end of the boardroom table that was banging his fist on the table. They bought into it. They made us successful, and I'm thank you for mentioning that.
Oh yeah,
really
and then just to add to that, Scott, because I know that that there is companies like Tridel that spend a lot of money and to try to kind of ensure that they kind of get awards like this. Yeah. So you guys did it with your blood, sweat, and tears, like you said, the team. So I gotta tip my hats off to you, buddy.
Thank you.
Oh yeah,
appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no, for sure, definitely, man. So Scott, I had to fit that in there, and I apologize. I told you it was a 25-minute show. I know we've gone over the limit. I'm gonna have to have you back because, dude, you're so interesting. You're so motivating. It's incredible.
Anytime.
But what we're gonna do, guys, is we're gonna sign off here, and I want to thank Scott for coming on, and I want to thank the listeners for tuning in to another episode of The Sheriff. We'll see you next time, guys. Woo!